That was my interview with Professor Zhang Weiwei from Fudan University. Coming up after a quick break, Fred Teng, president of the America-China Public Affairs Institute, will be sharing his views on the current trade war and what the future looks like for the U.S.-China relationship. Stay with us. For a year and a half, China and the United States have been locked in a bitter trade war. While businesses and consumers are appealing for a resolution, there is no end or certainty in sight. What's the overall health of the China-U.S. relationship, and what does the future look like for the world's two economic giants? I talked in New York with Fred Teng, president of the America-China Public Affairs Institute. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Well, I think the United States and China's relations right now is at the transition time. It's a very uncertain time because people don't know where it's going. But in the long run, I'm still very optimistic about these two countries. They will be working together. There are a lot of different changes, not just because the United States, nor just China, but there's a globally changing of different populism, different type of sentiments of people, and also because of automation and others bring in terms of job loss and so forth. So it's a great time of changes right now.
Is it a great time of change, or is it a difficult time of change? I mean, for American businesses, American consumers, how much have the tensions, trade tensions, been felt in their lives? Has it been a painful experience, or it's yet to be felt profoundly, but worse times could come?
The trade war is definitely unwise, whichever side does it. Tariff only hurts its own people. But the reality is that a trade war is definitely not good for either side. But I think also many of the policymakers, they have mistaken. They think the job loss is caused by China. But in reality, the job loss for most of the people is caused by automation. This is happening to the United States. In fact, there are reports being done. 88% of the United States job loss is caused by automation. And this automation is also causing job loss in China. It will bring greater good in the long run because machines will be producing goods at higher quality, a better product. But blaming on each other is not a good way to do it.
But at this moment, it's very difficult to get these messages across, right? Because you can talk about it, but what is being said primarily on the mainstream media has been that China stole the jobs, and you can say as much as you want, it's automation. It doesn't seem to get across. What can people do to really help the facts be out there?
I think that certainly experts, professionals, business people, good people need to speak out and bring these facts to the voice out there and to have this kind of discussion. Even talking to people who disagree or they have misunderstanding or have wrong ideas. If we don't speak out, then those type of voices will keep on perpetuating in the society. And then people will be in denial. If good people don't speak up, other people will be fooled, will be mistaken by the real cost. And the cost of this opportunity, cost of them then looking at the wrong reasons why it's causing our downturn or the economy or job loss or even the competition, it will actually be harmful to our country.
Does it frustrate you that, you know, this is exactly what's happening in the United States? You think?
Yes, it is. I mean, we have a very unprecedented president, and his election was surprised by many people. His choice of staff also, and the frequency of the change of his staff, is also frustrating people. And the changing of policy without a stable policy that's being maintained is really hurting in the long term how people and how the business is conducting itself. So this is the situation right now. We do think that better times will come. This too shall pass. But in the meantime, we still have to keep true to ourselves, keep our principles, and do the right things. But sometimes it's difficult in difficult circumstances.
What do you mean by do the right things? You mean for Chinese businessmen in the United States, or do you mean the Chinese government, the Chinese people have to do the right things?
I think that, as people, as humans, as individuals, we do know right for wrong. There are right things to do and there are wrong things to do. Right things is that principle, treat each other fairly, treat each other equally, so that we don't cheat each other, we don't go to take shortcuts, we don't blame each other for our own mistakes. And I think that sometimes, as humans, we fall short of that. And I think that some of the people should speak out and remind others what's the right thing to do, what is the correct path to take for the future. So that if you're seeing people falling off the cliff, you have to tell them to stop, because if they don't, some people will fall off the cliff.
Do you think the Chinese government has handled this relationship or this difficulty in our relationship in a wise way, or do you think there are also things that China should also focus on a bit more, maybe?
I think that initially, which is last March, when this first happened, from my observation of the Chinese government, is that they have so many things on their hands. They just want to get it out of the way. So if the United States wants this much buying of their products, let's just do it. But on the U.S. side, I think that sometimes they get carried away. They say, well, it's so easy. They agree to it, so let's ask for some more and some more. That's why this negotiation becomes 11 and 12 different rounds. If the U.S. would have agreed on the 7th round, they would have gained so much more already. But at this point, I think China also feels that there's a lack of sincerity on the U.S. side in the negotiation. They feel that no matter what they do, there's not going to be a deal. So when somebody offers you a deal and you refuse, that does not stay at that level of the last offer. It goes back to zero. So the U.S. side right now is quite upset because they thought they have negotiated a certain point, but those points are taken because they didn't take those offers. As far as handling international relations, I think China is relatively a young country, certainly has a 70-year history of the current government, but the last 40 years was its development, and I would say it's even less, maybe even last 30 years. In the 1990s and on, China is still developing its people in different branches of government. In terms of handling international relations, I think that they still have room to grow, but they have improved so much.
Where do you think China and the United States will be positioned, let's say, 50 years from now, or 100 years even, because there are all kinds of guesses, about what the new world order is going to be. What is your take?
Well, I think in the next 30 years, we'll have a clearer picture. I do think that China will become one of the very top and strong countries in the world. Wherever United States will be, it's up to the United States in terms of its domestic policies and how it handles itself. But I think that by going to China so often, looking at its economy, looking at its people, it is something that's moving ahead and is competing against itself, not competing against the United States or any country. But because of its policy, like Belt and Road initiatives and so forth, they're working with so many countries, and most of the countries welcome them, even though the United States is not participating in them. Many American companies are already profiting from it, like Caterpillar and GE, and all of these companies, they're already making money on the Belt and Road initiative. So I think that China, in the long run, will prove to the world it's a good partner. It's no bad intent for anyone, and it's not going to be interfering with other countries' domestic policies.
How is the United States going to position itself vis-à-vis China as a new pillar, let's say, in the world? So what would the United States will have to go through in order to find this comfortable new balance vis-à-vis China?
Well, China is a 5,000-year-old country. United States is 200 years old. In the last few thousand years, there are dynasties that goes up and down. Greece, Roman, many of the empires rise and maybe slow down. Egypt, another one. I think that even after the Second World War, at some point in the next 30 years, United States will have to get used to that China is a player in the world. Whether it's number one, number two, doesn't really matter, but they have to recognize that China will be an equal player. It will be just as vigorous in terms of competition, but it also can prove to be a good partner. So I think that slowly some of the distrust will be gone, and I think hopefully they will work with each other again.
What are you going to spend your energy on then, now that, you know, the government relations may be a little bit strained? Where are you going to prioritize your schedule, your energy? Our
organization has been setting up goals for very long-term goals. And we think these goals are really going to be milestones for U.S.-China relations in the next stage. The first is travel. We advocate a mutual visa waiver between the United States and China. Now you say this is impossible right now, but in 1968, if I tell you U.S.-China will build diplomatic relations after 10 years, you will not believe me either. And we think that a free travel is the first step for a citizen and for its business to go to each other's country. And once we actually, the U.S. Travel Association actually have talked about this, mutual visa waiver makes both countries safer, because they will have access to each other's travelers' information. And as a result, when somebody coming into the country, they can know. Right now, when you have a 10-year visa, you don't know whether this person 6 months ago committed a crime. It's just a piece of paper on a passport. Secondly is we think that both countries, while there's trade negotiation going on, whatever negotiation that they have, it's just a ceasefire. Until the day U.S. and China can have a free trade agreement where our goods can be freely sold to each other without tariff, without taxes. Both ways, U.S. goods selling to China, Chinese goods selling to the United States.
Do you think it is possible anytime soon?
I think that if that can happen, it will help these two countries grow so much that the dividend they could not even imagine.
Right now we're going in the opposite direction, yes, right? 20% for each other.
But sometimes when the brightest day is when you have storms coming. And I do think that sometime down the road, these are steps that do come. The third is security. We feel that both countries should have a security partnership in anti-terrorism, cybersecurity, pandemic disease control, military cooperation, as well as law enforcement cooperation. And lastly is Arctic Circle coordination and space coordination. These are all the new frontiers. We have so much to do, so much to work with each other. Now, we're advocating this, we're laying the groundwork. We know it's not going to happen in the next 3 years or 5 years, but hopefully somebody will listen, and we would love to see one of these pieces of policy would become fruition.
Thank you so much, Fred Teng, President of the America-China Public Affairs Institute.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.